Upstream, where we explore people who have chosen to live differently and challenge the paths society expects us to follow. Today I'm talking with April Ratchford. April is an occupational therapist, writer, and the host of the podcast Adulting with Autism, where she helps autistic adults navigate the transition into independence and adulthood. Her work blends professional insight with lived experience, especially after discovering later in life that she herself is autistic. April, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go back to that moment that really set you on this path. What was happening in your life when your son was graduating high school?
Actually, he graduated during COVID, and I was so proud of him for getting his diploma. And then we were like, is that it? There's no thing in Houston. And so I knew my son wasn't ready. So I kept him home at least for a little bit longer until I could get him doing his own ADLs. And I'm not getting him up or setting anything, and he could do his laundry and not burn down my house. Then when he went to school at EKU, I thought, oh, they have a strong OT program. He'll be fine. It was a total dumpster fire. I was like, this is awful.
Oh, no.
And he was traumatized. I was traumatized. I was like, okay. So when we brought him home, I was looking for something to help him transition into adulthood, because he was having trouble with the transition. I could not find anything, not on our OT websites, not on our national website. I was like, how are parents doing this? I don't see any parent doing this. And so my fiance at the time, he just threw a mic at me and he said, why don't you start a podcast?
I love that. I love that. And you've said that the point you started realizing that there were very few resources for autistic young adults transitioning into adulthood was really difficult. And what did that experience feel like as a parent?
As a parent, it's frustrating, it's heartbreaking, because people are like, oh, you're an occupational therapist. I'm like, oh, my specialty is long-term care, not adolescents. So it's trying to find something that works for them, especially when we live in a small town and you can't find anything online because there's just not that much out there. I think people forgot that they turn into adults and they still need that help.
Yeah. And that frustration eventually led you to start your own podcast, which you mentioned, Adulting with Autism. What made you decide to start recording conversations instead of just continuing to search for answers privately? Like, why a podcast specifically?
So I was at a crossroads of my own career, because you get burned out after being 29 years in healthcare.
Ooh.
And I don't do well in director positions because I'm not that organized. I'll tell you, I have no sense of time, no organization. I don't want to micromanage people. I was like, there's got to be something else. And granted, telehealth was out there, but I was like, I don't do pediatrics. I don't do kids. So I was like, okay, I'll start a podcast. I had no idea how none of it works. No idea. So I started this podcast, and then I was like, well, how do you get guests? How does this work? I found Podmatch, and I was like, wahoo! So we're just gonna put anybody on here. Until I started looking at podcast channels that kind of guided me on what a podcast should be, what your audience should be. And when they were like, you should whittle it down, I was like, whittle it down? it's a niche that no one's tapped. I'm trying to cover them all.
Yeah, I mean, and I know from my own experience too, starting a podcast can feel really, really intimidating. What were those early days like for you when you first launched the show? You're finding guests, you discovered Podmatch. Like, how was that feeling on the inside for you?
It's like exciting because it's something new. And I was like, I can make money off of this. How do you do this? How do these people do this? Because I've seen other podcasters live on their podcast that they know that's their full-time job. And I was like, how can I get from A to B? So it's learning, going back, unfortunately, and learning how you build a podcast, what's the most important, um, what is my niche, and how can I keep it just within my niche? Because people don't understand. I'm like, if you have an idea for a podcast, it's like one idea and you've got to keep to that particular idea because it's so easy to veer off and try to do everything, but you can't. And then learning platforms and what works, what doesn't work. I'm like, this is not easy. And when you have to edit yourself, like my first few podcasts was a solo because I didn't have guests at the time, and nor did I edit. So I just slapped it up there. These are little tiny things you learn as you go.
Yeah, I mean, and you've come so far. Now you've recorded hundreds of episodes and reached millions of downloads. When you look back, did you ever imagine it would grow into something so large?
Absolutely not. I was hoping I could reach people and help people. I didn't know I was going to get to this point of almost having over 300 downloads or 300 episodes and millions of downloads. I was like, oh my gosh. And then people started saying, hey, you should make a course. And I was like, oh, that sounds daunting. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's so impressive. And one of the really interesting parts of your story is that through this process, you discovered that you are autistic as well. What was that moment like when that realization came together for you?
I was like, oh, that's why I didn't do well in school or did the things I did. Like, it made sense because I would be hyper focused on something one day and then drop it and do something else. It was really weird. Well, my mom thought it was weird. She's like, how do you do this? And I'm like, oh, you just do it. And I still hyper focus to this day. My new interest is Mount Everest. I don't know why. I don't plan to climb it, but I want to trek to it.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you felt like pieces started to fall in place and make sense for you with this realization.
Yeah, like I do all the things that autistic people do with stimming, but I didn't realize I was stimming. Like I will click a pin, bounce my leg, or if I'm in a spinning chair, I do this to this day. I'll just kind of be spinning in a chair, and it's just my stimming, just me getting input from my nervous system.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that, as I said, that this is something that you've discovered for yourself. And then once you had that realization, things starting to make sense and kind of fall in place for you. Now, you've also talked about making the workplace and in everyday life, you've talked about masking in the workplace and in everyday life. So for people who may not be familiar with that concept, what does masking actually mean?
Masking is basically you're an actor and trying to fit into the scheme of your workplace. So that, you don't want people to look at you and say, oh, you have autism. And a lot of stereotype is still around with adults with autism, like we're supposed to fall on the floor or something. So that's what it is. And it can be exhausting, like to the point of, I got to the point where I would just melt down and fly off the handle and say some things to a boss that you should never say. Where my sister would have to talk me off the ledge. She's like, do you think that's appropriate? And I'd be like, no, that wasn't appropriate.
Yeah. And as both a parent and a professional occupational therapist, you've seen that transition from childhood to adulthood up close. And looking back in, your personal life and professional life, why do you think that stage is still so overlooked for autistic individuals?
I think most of it is just, we don't consider that, yes, they need help through primary school, but they're still going to need that help afterwards because they still need support.
Yeah.
Just because they graduated doesn't mean they magically just snapped to and pulled it together, because I got a rude awakening when that happened. I was like, this is not what this is. But I thought he would have it together. He totally didn't get it together until this year, and he just turned 24.
Yeah. It seems strange to me too, because it's not like the moment you graduate, you suddenly change. You're still the same person. You still have the same needs for support and everything else. And, why that isn't offered seems like a big mystery. So definitely frustrating. And it also seems like many systems seem to focus on supporting autistic children, but those resources disappear when they become adults too. So it's not just resources, but it's kind of the whole system itself. Would you agree? Is that consistent with what you found?
Yeah, that's what I've found. Like, especially once they turn 21, and there's nothing. Like, because what people fail to realize is school was what was socializing them and getting them used to transition. But now you have a whole adult who's able to make poor choices in the real world and not understand, hey, your choice has consequences, serious consequences, because they're adults and they will do what they do until, someone explains to them, hey, this is why you can't just act out in public. You are now an adult. They see you as a threat.
Yeah, and that's a big shift. I think for anybody, but especially for those who are transitioning as an autistic adult into, potentially the world of not being in a school anymore, not having that level of support. Maybe there's expectations to potentially get a job or support yourself, or just act like a grown up, right? If they haven't had that opportunity to do that, it seems so unreasonable to have that expectation on them.
And it's so strange because even neurotypical peers, they don't have it together.
No.
So what makes you think they are supposed to have it together? Like, when the neurotypical peers, they're falling apart too. Like, you have all this freedom now, and that doesn't do well for people who are used to structure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to switch back to your podcast for a minute, because that's been such an important part of your journey. At some point, you realized that podcasting might actually become a business and a career. What was a moment for you when you thought, hey, this could really work?
When I actually saw a check.
Ooh.
And everybody's like, was it? And no, no, people, that's not how any of this works. Thousands upon thousands of dollars don't fall in your lap like that. But when I saw that revenue can be made, and then I'm like, hey, I can make t-shirts and money. And then that started, and I was like, I got to learn this business thing. I was like, I should have paid more attention in school to business. But that's when I really realized I could get out of healthcare and start a whole new journey for myself.
Yeah. I mean, and nothing is standing in your way. Today, you're building a platform that not only supports autistic adults, but also aims to educate professionals and universities. What message do you most want occupational therapy programs and institutions to understand?
It, they still need us after 18. They still need us. It doesn't end at 18 or 21. Afterwards, they're going to need us for learning money management, sensory needs, because your sensory needs change as you grow older. It's not going to be the same as when they're 12. And they don't get that. They think this goes together. And I'm like, no, stuff changes as you grow and experiences. And they still need to learn how to navigate where they live. And what if they do want to live on their own? What are you going to do for bills and a job? These are like things that we don't think about until they're like 18. And I'm like, oh crap, he's got a long way to go.
And how important is community in this whole transition process? Because I mean, some people are very lucky, they have supportive families and community around them. Some people don't have that. They just don't. So how important is that to either lean on the community you do have, or if you don't have it, invest in finding that level of support?
Like, it's so important to find that you're not alone. There are other parents with older kids on the spectrum out there telling their story, and don't feel like you're ever going to travel this by yourself, because people are out there to help in community, and it's a global thing. So if you can't find it near you, you can find it somewhere, whether it's Australia, England, Europe, doesn't matter. There's still a community.
That's beautiful. I'm also curious about your perspective on technology because, obviously we've come a long way and there's a lot of resources out there on the computer, different devices. Where do you stand on that? Like, is technology amazing and is it helpful, or is it just not worth the hassle and too complicated?
Oh, I love tech. I absolutely loved it. So I'm a techie though, but it's so helpful, but you also have to explain how to actually use it. Sure, you can talk to ChatGPT all day, but it only gears toward what you ask it. It's not like your BFF. That's where we draw the line. You want to research and do things that can help grow you versus using it as your best friend. I taught my son how to use Perplexity for his math class because he can't understand his teacher. And I was like, go on this AI and they'll explain it to you.
Aww.
And once he got going, he's like, yeah, I really like Gemini. I'm like, well, don't be charging my card. Thank you.
That's great. I really like your point too, April, about understanding how to use it, that it's not meant to just do the math problem for me, but more explain what these concepts mean or what this term means, and then let me do the work and do it on my own, more as a guide and an aid and not as a do it all for me. I think that's such an important point. really for everyone on the planet, but especially for people who may need that extra support and understanding that, yeah, it's still important for you to do this on your own, right? It's still important for you to learn how to do things and what it means, but there are a lot of resources today, a lot of tech stuff out there to help with that.
Yeah, it's a lot. The AI is a lot, and you just have to be able to use it
Yeah.
not sparingly, but just safely, because it's still learning. And I'm like, nothing's perfect.
Agreed. Agreed. I love my AI too, but yeah, I wouldn't depend on it for anything, life-saving.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So for parents listening today who may have an autistic child approaching adulthood, what are some of the most important things they can do to help prepare their kids for independence?
so be realistic, because I know all parents want their kids to go to college and get a career and all the things, especially when they are a higher level. But really ask your kid, what do you want to do? And if they have no idea, do not send them to a school when they have absolutely no idea what they want to do. Let them stay home for a year, take a gap year, maybe get a job. See if they like people. Because you get so hopeful that they are just going to take off, and I'm like, they're not just going to take off. And it may take until their mid-20s, until that maturity is there to hit and be independent for college. And that's okay. You just have to meet them where they are and then build from there.
I really appreciate that answer because I agree. It's so important not to push somebody in a direction that they may not want to go into. And I think at a deeper level, at least the way I'm interpreting what you're saying is that it's really speaking to passion. And why force somebody to do something that they don't want to do, or they may not have any interest in, or they're just not even curious about it? Because when there's something that you are interested in, that passion bubbles up, it's easier, it's more exciting, they're going to stick with it so much more. So I really appreciate that piece of advice there.
That's what I finally asked my son. He's like, I want to do video game development. And I was like, are you sure? That's a lot of math. You hate math. But as long as he's excited about it, now he's like, hey, can I do computer science and thermodynamics? I said, I don't care what you do. Just pass all your classes. And he's going to make the dean's list this year.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Wow, April, our time has flown by. And before we wrap up, I have one last question for you. Your story reflects the idea that it's never too late to change direction or build something meaningful. If someone listening feels stuck in a career or a life path that no longer fits them, what would you say to them?
If you have a passion, you can make money at it. You'll figure out how to make money because you love what you do.
Absolutely. I love that. That is a great inspirational note to end on. April, thank you so much for joining the show today and sharing your story. This conversation highlighted something so important. The transition into adulthood is challenging for anyone, but for autistic individuals and their families, it can feel especially overwhelming when support systems suddenly disappear. Your work is helping bring awareness, practical tools, and real conversations to a space that truly needs them. I appreciate you taking the time to share both your professional insights and your personal journey. Thanks again for being here, April.
Thank you so much for having me.